this is one of the hardest tournaments for fishermen to fish, because even for me, even though I've been at it 17 years, when you know you got to come in this last day and you got 10,000 people sitting there, it's an external that starts to really mess with your mind out there around 9 or 10 o'clock if you hadn't had a bite. And so what you start to do, you start to fish for these people back here. Say, man, I just got to get 5 little fish in the boat so I don't look like an idiot when I go in there. But that takes you out of the classic kind of thinking, trying to get 5 little fish. And I was guilty of that a little bit the first couple of years. So this year I said, whether I blank or not, I'm going to commit to those fish and stay on them all 3 days. I knew if I only got 1 day on these fish, one good day I could win this tournament on. And but I didn't know which day that'd be, so I committed to all 3 days. And the first 2 days were a little bit tough. I run the mouth, again, I was in the James. I was running the mouth of Keenan Wash, of Kittywan, Wine Oak, and Wards. Basically the 4 creeks I was running the mouth of. I didn't fish in the creeks. I stayed out in the mouth around the cypress trees and the logs that were out in the mouth of the creek. And the first 2 days, it was kind of what I expected. I was expecting 6 to 8 bites a day, and I knew execution was going to be real critical. In the first 2 days, the first day I did have 8 bites. I only landed 6 of the fish, which was my smallest catch. Yesterday, I only had 6 bites, and I landed 4 of them. And but today was the day that I was hoping would happen. I started in the first area of the day. I stopped. I never left it. 14 bites later, I'd landed every fish. I had my first limit by about 9:15 this morning, and I just caught all day long. It never really slowed down that much. What I was doing, I was fishing, 80% of my fish came on the RC1. When the tide was low, I'd go to the shallow running bait. When the tide would get high in some deeper areas, then I'd go back to the RC3. About 80% of the baits came on the shallow bait. The rest of them come on the RC3. I caught my last 3-pounder on the way in, on the rip-rap on the bridge, on the RC3. But the rest of the fish today came on the RC1. It's blackback, chartreuse, and green sides with the orange belly. That's the colors. It's a blackback. They both were the same color. I threw the same color all tournament on both baits. Blackback, chartreuse side, and a red belly. I'm sorry. Okay, the 4 creeks that I fished in the 3 days were, and again, just the mouth, was the mouth of Keenan Marsh, Wine Oak, Kittywan, and Wards.
Hey, Ricky.
Yes.
You mentioned that one of the weigh-ins that you went to find Larry Nixon and didn't know what was that?
Well, y'all know how mentally powerful I am. I was having this effect on my engine every day coming back. And this is no joke. Every day I'd stop at the bridge on the way back and I'd fish, and my engine I could not get it started to save my life. And I always was running short, so I was frantically running around trying to get it started, and I couldn't. So I'd wave down a boat and ride in. And the first day, Mr. McLaughlin and his family brought me in. Today, the same place, the same thing happened again, and Larry Nixon brought me in today. So that was what that was about. The odd thing was that when we'd call the Coast Guard, when they'd get there, probably 15 minutes later, he'd have to work with it, but he'd get it started, and he'd drive in about 20 minutes behind me in my boat. So, you know, the first day they told me that I'd run out of gas on the first tank, or I was low on it, and it created a vapor lock in that line, and I needed to, squeeze the bulb, which I didn't do the first day. Now, the first thing I did today when it happened was run back and squeeze that bulb, and then I even had my press guy squeeze it because I thought maybe I was doing something wrong. But we just couldn't get it started, and we were again running out of time, so I flagged Larry down today. Fortunately today I gave myself an hour to come back, so I had about 15 minutes when I flagged Larry down today. And yesterday I had about 6 minutes. No, I'm sorry, he stopped and we transferred my fish into one of his live wells and got in his boat. No, we didn't have time to tow back. The question is, where does this rank as far as the other 3 previous wins? And that's incredibly hard to answer at this point. It takes usually for me a week or so for it all to absorb in. I know in my mental way of thinking there's just another step and in the direction I'm going. I also know that I feel very good inside. Mainly, and a lot of it has to do with my 2 daughters being here. They'd never seen me win a classic. And my wife has been to all of them graciously at every one. And, but they had never witnessed me to win one, so I felt real warm inside. I said in the beginning of this, when I was up here in press conference, that the whole key to fishing is getting tuned in. And once I get tuned in, or any of these good fishermen get tuned in, it's usually over. And today, that's what happened. That creates a feeling that cannot be put in the limited human language that I know. And then my daughters being here and Jerry being here is the other feeling. And again, to really give you a more tangible answer would be very difficult at this point. Do I have a good luck charm? I don't. You know better than that. What are the girls' names and how old are they? My oldest daughter is Brooke. She's Brooke, B-R-O-O-K-E. She's 16. And then Courtney, C-O-R-T-N-E-Y, and she's 11. T-N-E-Y. Yes. The question was, I was using a crankbait which produces traditionally, quality fish. Why was I doing that as opposed to a worm, which he says a lot of the other fishermen were fishing? Larry Nixon can prove that a worm catches a lot of big fish too, and he did it quite well this year several times. But I tend to, my fish, I think as much as anything, I was fishing water that wasn't being fished at all, and or very little. I never saw another boat running my stuff in 3 days or in any, well, I take that back. Jimmy Houston came in there the day and started to come in, saw me, never even picked up his troll motor and cranked and left. And he surely did not know that I had a chance to win. He was just being that courteous. Hank Gibson from Canada the first day, he was fishing at the point of it, but not back in it. And he talked this morning and said he was going to let me have the area, which was another great gesture. But outside of those, really, I just hadn't had any pressure, and I really think that was why I was catching the fish. My fish were reflex fish, and of course, that's where I'm best at, is on reflex type fish. And what I'm saying is that they want a bait that surprises them, and it's right there, and then boom, they hit it. A worm, I've tried in this area many times, and I can't hardly get bit in this area with a worm. And so it has to be that reflex situation that is causing the strikes.
What was the pH today?
The question was, where was the pH today? And the area I was fishing the first day I checked was very good, sitting at around 8 to 8.5. I haven't checked it since the first day of practice, so I don't really know.
You say you're not going to divulge the exact location where you were today, you just talked about it.
The question is, he said, I will not divulge the exact location, and no, I will not. It's not fair to the fish. It just puts an incredible amount of pressure on that one spot. I am telling you the truth, what I'm telling you. Those are the 4 areas that I fished. And I will tell you exactly to the T the pattern, and because that's really what helps people anyway to learn to fish, not showing them the spot. You're taking away their learning when you show them that piece of the puzzle. I'm more than happy to share the patterns, the baits, the general areas, but I don't think I've ever done anybody a favor to take them and show them a spot to fish. You do them a much bigger favor if you motivate them to learn to fish. Yes, sir.
Hank retired and he won 2 classes. A lot of these fishermen are in effect merchandising themselves and branching out of tournament fishing. You maintain your focus in the tournament fishing. Why is that?
The question was that he asked me why that I don't market myself more than I do. I tend to be more of what I categorize as just a pure fisherman instead of a businessman. First of all, maybe I've never wanted to be a businessman. That's the reason I left Exxon Oil Company. I wanted to experience fishing at the purest level I can. The sponsors are an incredibly necessary part of this sport. And I tried to work with them in the best way I know how, and that's working with y'all. And, but I still I try to maintain my emphasis on fishing, because every sport has a tendency, if you don't watch it, to eventually consume you, even the sports you love. And you can see that in other sports. And it's happened to me, come close to happening to me a couple times. And fortunately, I woke up and said, hey, I'm getting right back where I was at Exxon, and this is not what I really want to do. I want to experience what fishing can teach me. And so everybody's different. Everybody chooses a different direction to go. And mine is I prefer, that to try to stay just a fisherman. The learning there is infinite. The learning in the business, there's always things to learn, but it's very slow. And in fishing, it's just incredibly an infinite process that I'm just totally in love with. And retirement's a word I don't believe in. I don't even think that that's a word that Hank chooses. Hank is just changing his direction. And he's got an emphasis on other things in his life. And like I said, everybody has a different path that they take. And but I personally don't believe in it. I don't think we were put here to retire. I think we were put here to learn from the day we were born to the day we die. And that's what I intend to try to do.
How many more years do you anticipate being?
How many more years do I anticipate fishing? I cannot answer that question. As long as this vehicle teach me what it does, then I'm going to stay in it. And right now, I don't see that changing. If I find a better one, like maybe Hank has done, then I might. But right now, this is the purest environment that I know that I can immerse myself in. Yes?
In this classic win and in the previous one, your family played an important role. Does that give you extra adrenaline, or is it more of a calm effect?
The question is, what role does your family play in the previous classics and this one? Do they actually give you, adrenaline, or are they a calming effect? I think really they're both. I think they share their energy with me in a quiet way. And, support, whether, from my family, is, as I've said throughout my whole career, is just incredible. And most of you know the long story of my early career, where Jerry literally was my sponsor, like many of you guys, wives are your sponsors, until probably the third year when I won my first classic. And of course, my daughters, again, are a part of me, so it's very difficult to say anything that would be the correct adjective in their case. And again, my dad is always, he's the one who instilled that love for the outdoors with me originally. So, it's a total thing. To me, I can't do it without the whole process. I can't just improve myself physically and accomplish very much. You got to improve yourself, in everything you do. And the family plays a big role. Yes? Okay, he wants me to explain the technique in some detail on what I was using with the RC1 pole plug. I was basically, I like to burn the bait, but I wasn't doing that here because when I burn the bait, I tend to run it down in the bottom, and I was intentionally trying to keep it off the bottom as much as I could because of what happened in previous years. And so I was really just kind of reeling the bait at medium speed. I was using 17-pound clear blue strand. I fish heavy line. A lot of guys, I've been asked, well, are you fishing the light line to keep the bait up? No, and that tends to be the average line I fish on most of my baits, is 17. There wasn't that much line in the water, so my rod was really what was keeping the bait up or letting it go down. Did you have something else I just missed? I was using my typical glass rods. Most of you know my philosophy on glass rods. Sorry, excuse me. Okay, well, no, the question was, how did I present the bait? Really, normally the tendency to go through an area is you start to select angles to fish. That's your first pass through the area. If that's successful, the real problem there is that normally you'll lock in on those angles. And I really have tried to avoid that. So when I go through these trees or these logs at one angle first. I present my bait at every angle that direction presents. Once I go all the way through, if I've had success, then I go back, I try to change the angle, come from a different direction. So I present the bait at a different angle to each one of those trees or those logs. And I try to work every potential spot. When you work a place over and over like I did today, even when you're catching fish, you can really get in a rut, because what you'll do, you'll really start to focus on certain angles that have produced earlier fish for you, and that's a big mistake. So I'm constantly changing my angles, my direction all day long, so I can dissect like let's say you had a cypress tree, where I can hit it from one angle, hit it from the other, and then turn and come back from the other side and hit it from the other side, not necessarily immediately, but on the next pass through. It's got cracks in the roots and stuff. I really try to make sure I put the bait in every crack. I'm throwing, and this is the whole key to the RC1 that a lot of people don't understand. I throw a RC1 the same place I throw a spinnerbait. I got blisters on my fingers from popping my line to get the bait loose. I'm probably getting hung up 40, 50, 60 times a day. But that's where a lot of people quit fishing the bait, because they don't want to commit to the bait that long under those conditions. And so I'm dissecting it from every possible angle that I can potentially put a bait there. And that's about really the only thing I know how further to answer you with that question. One question here. I tried. The question was, did I ever not flip at all? And I tried a little bit of it. Like I said, I didn't have a lot of confidence in these fish on reflex baits, and I really never did any good at it. How many minutes ahead of the tide line? The deadline. The day we got in, when I came in with Larry, with about 10 minutes. Yesterday I got in with about 3 minutes. Let me, Sammy, I can't hardly see him because of the light, but back in the back here. The question is, what made my particular selection of bait and water depth? The water depth was really what controlled my decision between the RC3 and RC1. On the high tide, I would fish the RC3 a lot. But once the tide dropped about halfway down to low, then I pretty well stayed with the RC1, because I was losing my depth, and I didn't want to dig. The RC1 runs about 1 to 5 foot, and the RC3 runs about 1 to 10 foot. So I was really choosing my baits according to the tide level and the depth. And again, it was, I just stayed again with the same color bait the whole tournament. The depth in there today was really strange. I wasn't supposed to have a low tide until 12:40 today. And when I got there, the tide was as low as it's been all week. And it just kept going out until I left. And it just started back in when I left. So that's what really made me stay with the RC1 all day today, was because I was fishing a low tide all day today. I caught my last fish today coming back on the bridge, riprap, about a 3-pounder on RC3.
Based on what happened in Jim last year, were you worried when you were transferring fish from one boat to another?
The question was, based on what happened to Jim Bitter last year, wasn't you worried when you were transferring your fish from one boat to the other, which I've done a lot the last 2 days? No, I had a pretty good grip on them. Plus, I had my press guy sitting there welding the two boats together, so there was no crack in between the two boats. And now, those things happen, and that's unfortunate. My heart went out to Jim last year, and because I know him being a biologist and a fisherman, he's handled 10 million fish, and that was just one of those things that was meant to happen. Sammy?
Now, the fish that you were catching out of cypress trees, we know most cypress trees have root system close to the base, and a lot of them have a donut on the outer side. Were your fish located on the outer side of this root system, this donut?
The question was, where was my fish located in relationship to the root system of the cypress tree? You got the cypress tree that comes down, and then underneath the water you have all these knees that extend out under the water. And he said, where were your fish located? Most of the fish you'd had to pretty well hug the cypress tree. In fact, you didn't really want the bait to go down to the bottom. Strangely enough, today, a lot of my fish were out away from the cypress trees. And I don't know if the low tide even came so low that it forced them out to the very extent of the last roots of that cypress tree. But you know, especially early this morning, a lot of my fish were out on the very imaginable perimeter of what you might think those cypress roots and knees would extend. Back, yes, sir. The question was, all those fish were on treble hook today. Did I swing them over or did I reach over and lip them? I swing almost everything. But the first big fish today, I looked at him, he had the bait good, and so I swung him. It was one about 4.5. The next big fish that I caught, I looked at him, he only had one hook in him, so I fought him down and I lipped him. The third big fish, I lipped that fish too. He was hooked pretty good, but I saw he was hooked so good. He had both hooks on both sides of his mouth that the only thing that could have happened would be, I mean, he wasn't coming off, so why swing him? You know, if swinging him, you can always run the chance of breaking your line or doing something foolish. So I went ahead and lipped that fish, and I got the bait was all the way across his mouth, and you don't really have a choice, you just go for it. And so I went for it, and it's only fair that I get a hook into me occasionally when I put a hook in them. That happened twice today, matter of fact. But and then the third fish, I wasn't hooked very well either, and I went ahead and fought him around and lipped that fish. The rest of the fish, I swung. The last 3-pounder, I swung in the boat. The cameraman.
How many did you catch, and was any time of day better?
The question was, how many did I catch, and was any time of the day better? No. Terry Freeland, my rider, said I caught 15 fish today, counting one on the bridge coming back. All keepers. Never lost a fish today. Everything again. It's one of those days that everything fell in and, you know, was perfect.
So what bridge was it you're talking about, and what was the name of the family that gave you the lift yesterday?
What bridge was it, and what was the name of the family that gave me a lift yesterday? The bridge was the new bridge with the riprap just right before you get to the marina, only about 5 miles, 3 or 4 miles down from the marina. That brand new bridge has got a riprap on it. And the family yesterday was McLaughlin.
When did you know you won?
When did I know I won?
When did you were you really confident that you would have done it?
When I caught the third big fish. The question was, when did I know I won? I kept telling myself, and this is kind of a built-in thing you do, that I felt that Tommy would have a 8 to 10 pound stringer today. And I felt that I had to have a lot of big fish to catch him. And I felt that probably the worst string he would have would be somewhere in the 7 pound range. And so I knew I was pushing him when I caught my fourth big fish. And even though I was telling myself that, you know, that still inside something always clicks and says, you know, you've got it. And I think a lot of it had to do with my respect for Tommy. I've been second in the Classic twice. I've been second in a lot of other tournaments. The only thing I hate about this is beating another fisherman. I don't fish against them, but still that's the way it's interpreted. And Tommy won a tournament for me several years ago. I drew him at Truman, at Lake of the Ozark. He taught me how to pitch. I was the most incredible pitching lesson I'd ever gotten in my life, standing behind me. I ended up next year winning, and I didn't do it 1/10 as good as he did, but his method was so good that I ended up winning Okeechobee the next year using his technique. So it was especially difficult to know that he may be the one I would have to displace to win this tournament. But it doesn't matter who it is. It hurts. I know the feeling. I've had that hurting feeling way too many times. And again, I don't fish against them, and they don't fish against me, and that's just the way it turns out. Yes?
I noticed you wore your wife's environmental message embroidered on your shirt through the whole tournament. Do you see tournament fishing as a good means to communicate messages about water quality and environment, especially to youngsters?
The question was about what my wife embroidered on the back of my shirt. For any of you that didn't hear it, it was that my slogan since I won the Classic in 1984 is that there are no limits. And I always try to have a message someplace on me or on my tackle box. And I was trying to come up with one this year, and Jerry came up with this one, and it said that the world does have limits. Please recycle. And the question was, do I think that this is a good fishing is a good vehicle to spread those type of messages, and that is the reason. If I have to believe that there's a reason I won this tournament, that's the reason. I believe that with my whole heart, because that was foremost in my mind when I put it on the shirt, that if I win this tournament, then I will make that statement. And the vehicle, we're not up here. This is not a vehicle, and that's where it can consume you to win honors and awards. It's for a lot more than that. And if you don't use it for its correct purpose, then you're just not getting the full potential out of the vehicle. I wasn't given a shot to fish with the President of the United States for no reason. Everything happens for a reason. It's just up to me now to interpret what that reason is and act accordingly. But Tim?
That's the last
How
question.
have you changed the fisherman since Pine Bluff?
This is the last question.
How have you changed the fisherman as a fisherman since Pine Bluff?
The question is, how have I changed as a fisherman since Pine Bluff? I'm going to try to make it, I don't want to bore you with my mental side of myself, but I've really become a lot more intuitive fisherman and not so much intellectual. I think this society emphasizes the intellect too much, to the point that we shove the intuitive part of our beings back in a dormant state, and it's probably only a couple million times more powerful than the intellectual side of us. And I'm just getting better at that part of my fishing. Thank you. I appreciate it very much.